In 2005, a school bus carrying 15 students and a teacher vanished during a field trip in Harrow, Maine. No crash, no bodies, no answers. The town buried the story, and the world moved on. 20 years later, in 2025, Sarah Tillman finds a locket in a pawn shop, and the past claws its way back. What if the bus never crashed? What if it was never meant to? This is the story of the bus that stayed gone. Sarah hadn't set foot in Harrow in nearly 10 years. The town felt like a photograph left in the sun-faded but familiar. A single stoplight blinked lazily at the Maine intersection, casting a yellow glow over clapboard houses with peeling paint, patched up every spring, only to crack again by winter. The gas station, called Pine Top, doubled as a coffee shop and a bulletin, board for lost cats, bake sales, and faded flyers about town meetings. Sarah pulled into her mother's driveway, the gravel crunching under her tires. The house smelled of cedar and dust, the kind of scent that settles in when someone lives alone too long. She dropped her duffel bag by the door and found her mom, Ellen Tillman, asleep in an armchair. One sock dangled off her foot, and the TV murmured about roadwork, subtitles flickering. Ellen looked smaller, her face lined with age, her breathing soft but uneven. Sarah tucked a quilt over her gently and stepped outside, needing air to clear her head. Across the street stood a pawn shop, new since Sarah's last visit. A crooked sign read "Last Chance Bargains," the paint chipped like it had been there forever. With the sun dipping low and nothing else to do, Sarah crossed the road, her boots scuffing the asphalt. A bell jingled sharply as she pushed open the door. Inside, dust floated in lazy beams of fading light, and shelves sagged under the weight of old jackets, chipped mugs, and toys nobody wanted anymore. A man in his 50s stood behind the counter, flipping through a magazine, humming along to a scratchy radio playing Sweet Home Alabama. He barely looked up. "Passing through?" he asked, his voice gruff. "Back home," Sarah said, keeping her tone even. "I grew up here." He squinted, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. "You're Ellen Tillman's kid, right?" "Sarah?" She nodded. "Yeah. Well, damn," he said, like that explained everything, and went back to his magazine. Sarah wandered the cluttered aisles, her fingers brushing over a knitted scarf, a stack of warped paperbacks, a plastic dinosaur missing an arm. Then, in a glass case by the register, something caught her eye. A silver locket, small and delicate, with a tiny star charm and the initial K dangling from it. Her breath stopped. She knew that locket. It belonged to Kira Langston, her best friend in 6th grade. Kira, who always wore it, who chewed peppermint gum and laughed too loud, her ponytail bouncing as she whispered secrets during math class. Kira, who never came back from the field trip. It was October 14th, 2005. A yellow school bus left Harrow Middle School for Willow Creek Reserve, a nature spot an hour away. 15 kids, one teacher, gone. No wreckage, no tire tracks, no trace. The news called it a tragedy, maybe a wrong turn, maybe a mechanical failure. Search parties combed the woods for days, but after a week, the headlines dried up. The school held a quiet memorial, just a plaque with names, no photos, no speeches. Harrow didn't talk about it after that. Sarah had been homesick that day, a fever and a sore throat keeping her in bed. Lucky, her mom had said, her voice tight. Sarah never felt lucky. She stared at the locket, her pulse loud in her ears. "Where'd this come from?" she asked, her voice low. The man glanced at the case, barely interested. "Donation box, maybe last month. Could be from the Carter estate sale. They're clearing out their barn." Sarah's fingers tightened. "It belonged to someone I knew." "It was lost," he shrugged. $10. She pulled out her wallet, handed him a 20, and took the locket without waiting for change. Outside, under the bruising purple of the evening sky, she held it in her palm. The silver was worn but intact, the star charm scratched faintly. She opened it. Inside was a tiny, faded photo of Kira, smiling, her hair in that same messy ponytail. On the back, etched in faint, looping letters, KL. Sarah's hands shook. Kira never took this off. Not at school, not at sleepovers, not ever. How did it end up in a pawn shop 20 years later? Sarah slid into her car, the locket clutched in her fist, and sat there for 20 minutes, memories flooding back. The morning of the field trip, Kira waving from the bus window. The news reports, vague and then silent. The way the town stopped talking about it, like it never happened. Sarah had kept old newspaper clippings in a box back in Portland, tucked in a drawer. She labeled old stuff. She never opened it. But this locket wasn't just a memory. It was proof something was wrong. She opened her phone and started a new note. Missing. October 14th, 2005. Willow Creek field trip. 15 students, 1 teacher. No crash, no remains. Sarah Tillman absent due to illness. Kira Langston's locket found in Last Chance Bargains, Harrow, Maine. 2025. Someone's lying. Sarah looked across. The street at her mother's house. The porch, light flickering. Ellen was probably still asleep, unaware of the weight in Sarah's hand. The town hadn't changed, but something in Sarah had. The past wasn't gone. It was waiting. And she was about to make it talk. The morning after finding Kira's locket, Sarah Tillman stood outside Harrow Middle School, her breath fogging in the chilly October air. The building looked like it hadn't changed since 2005, same sagging roof, same rusted bike rack leaning. At an awkward angle, same sign with missing letters. Welcome to Harrow Middle Shoal. The flagpole chain clinked faintly in the breeze, a lonely sound that echoed the town's silence about that day. 15 kids had walked out of this school on October 14th, 2005, boarded bus 9 for the Willow Creek field trip, and never came back. Sarah had been homesick, her throat raw, her mom hovering with soup and worry. Now, 20 years later, the locket in her coat pocket felt heavier than it should, a small silver anchor pulling her back to that unanswered question. What happened to them? She turned off her car's engine, the locket tucked safely in her jacket, and stepped out. Her boots crunched on the gravel lot. She wasn't sure what she'd find inside, but Kira's locket wasn't just a trinket. It was a crack in the story Harrow had buried. She needed answers, not rumors or faded obituaries. The school's front office was brighter than she expected, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and new linoleum floors that smelled faintly of polish. A digital check-in screen glowed on the counter. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with a tight bun and a forced smile, looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I'm Sarah Tillman," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "My mom was Ellen Tillman, taught art here. I'm looking for some old records, maybe yearbooks from 2005. The woman's smile flickered, like she'd heard something she didn't like. "Tillman, huh? How's Ellen doing?" "Recovering from knee surgery," Sarah said. "I'm helping out while she's laid up." "Well, welcome back." The receptionist tapped her pen on the desk. "What do you need old records for?" Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Personal project. I was out sick for the Willow Creek field trip in '05, the one that, you know." The woman's face tightened, her eyes darting to the side. "Yeah, that was awful. We don't keep much from that year anymore. There was an audit a few years back. Privacy laws, you know. Cleared out a lot of old files." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her pulse quickening. "An audit? Just for that year?" The receptionist nodded, a little. "Too quickly. State thing. Compliance review. updated protocols. They shredded a ton of stuff. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "You looking for someone specific?" "Kira Langston," Sarah said, pulling the locket from her pocket and holding it up. The star charm glinted under the lights. This was hers. "I found it in a pawn shop yesterday." "I know it's hers." The woman's eyes widened, her fingers pausing on the pen. "Kira. Yeah, I remember her name. Sweet kid, always wore that locket. God, that whole thing was terrible." She glanced around the empty office, then leaned closer. "We weren't even allowed to hold a real memorial here. School board said it'd scare the younger kids." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. No memorial. No records. Someone wanted that day forgotten. "Do you have anything left? Yearbooks, class lists, anything from '05? The woman sighed, standing up. "There's a storage closet in the back. Mostly old yearbooks. A few boxes of student directories. It's a mess, but you can take a look for a few minutes." Sarah followed her down a narrow hallway that smelled of chalk dust and bleach, past a locked janitor's closet and a bulletin board with faded flyers. They stopped at a gray metal cabinet next to a fire extinguisher. "Nothing's organized," the receptionist warned. "Dig all you want, but don't expect much." She left Sarah alone, the hallway echoing with her footsteps. Sarah opened the cabinet, dust tickling her nose. Inside were stacks of binders, file boxes, and yearbooks wrapped in yellowed plastic. She pulled out the 2004-2005 yearbook and flipped to the 6th grade section. There was Kira, smiling wide, her hair in a messy ponytail, her eyes bright with the kind of joy only a kid could have. Sarah's chest tightened. She set the yearbook aside and grabbed a student directory, a typed list of homerooms and bus assignments. Her fingers moved fast, scanning pages until she found it. Field trip, October 14th, 2005. Bus 9. Teacher, Mr. Paul Vance. Students. List redacted. Every single name was blacked out, covered in thick marker lines. Sarah's throat tightened. Someone had gone through this by hand, erasing every kid on that bus. She held the page up to the light, squinting. Faint imprints showed where names had once been, but they were unreadable. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. The redacted list wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. She slid the directory back, her mind spinning. Who was Paul Vance? She barely remembered him, a quiet teacher who'd only been at the school that year. She opened her phone and searched. Paul Vance, Harrow, Maine. Nothing. No social media. No teaching records. No obituaries. Like he'd never existed. "You find what you needed?" The receptionist called from down the hall. "Sort of, Sarah." Sighed, closing the cabinet. She stepped outside into the crisp morning air and sat in her car, staring at the photo on her phone. The blacked-out names, Vance's missing record, it all screamed cover-up. She opened her note app and added, "Bus. 9 roster redacted. Paul Vance, teacher. No record after 2005. Someone erased them." She started the car, her eyes drifting to the locket in her pocket. Kira deserved better than silence. Sarah drove to the edge of Harrow, where Route 4B wound into the forest toward Willow Creek Reserve. The road was narrow, flanked by dense pines, the kind of place where GPS failed and phones went dead. She reached the trailhead by noon, parking near a half-rotted sign for Willow Creek, swallowed by ivy. The path was barely visible, overgrown, with weeds and gravel. No tire marks, no signs of maintenance. Sarah checked her phone, no signal. She grabbed her flashlight and started walking, the locket heavy in her pocket. She needed to see where the bus had gone, to feel the path Kira had taken. The woods were too quiet, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. After 20 minutes, the trail forked. One path was marked private property, no trespassing. The other was unmarked, choked with undergrowth. Sora chose the unmarked one, stepping over roots and fallen branches. 10 minutes later, she reached a clearing, wide and flat, ringed by tall pines. The grass was patchy, like it hadn't grown right in years. No benches, no signs for a preserve, just a rusted metal pole jutting from the ground and a concrete slab, half-sunken, cracked, and covered in moss. Sarah knelt, brushing dirt away. Carved into the concrete was a code, WCP-19, Willow Creek Project, Installation 19. Her pulse raced. This wasn't just a nature reserve. A twig snapped behind her. Sarah froze, turning slowly. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, middle-aged, in a heavy coat, holding a shovel. His eyes locked on hers, unblinking. "You lost?" He called. His voice gruff, but not hostile. Sarah stood, keeping her voice steady. "Just hiking. Trails closed," he said, stepping closer. "Dangerous out here." "I didn't see a sign," she said, her hand brushing the flashlight in her pocket. He studied her for a long moment. "You're Sarah Tillman, aren't you?" "Ellen's girl." Her stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "Small town," he said, his expression softening slightly. "Name's Tom Haskell. I was on the search team back in '05 when that bus went missing." Sarah's heart pounded. "Did you find anything?" He shook his head. "Not officially, but we saw bus tracks off the main path. Next morning, they were gone, like someone washed them away." He glanced around, lowering his voice. Willow Creek wasn't always a preserve. Back in the '80s, it was a testing site. Government stuff, maybe chemical, maybe something else. They shut it down in '89, but I don't think they ever really left. Sarah's mind raced. WCP-19. What kind of testing? Nobody said. Tom shifted his shovel. But when that bus vanished, the state pulled our search after days. Told us it was a lost cause. Something wasn't right. Sarah nodded, her fingers tightening around the locket. "Thanks for telling me." "Don't thank me," he said, his eyes heavy. "Just be careful. You're not the first to poke around. Here." He turned and walked back into the trees, leaving Sarah alone in the clearing. She snapped photos of the slab and the code, her hands trembling. The locket, the redacted list. Now this someone had gone to great lengths to erase what happened. She headed back to her car, the forest pressing in around her. Whatever had happened to Kira and the others, it started here, and Sarah was just beginning to uncover it. Sarah Tillman drove straight from Willow Creek to the Harrow Public Library, her mind buzzing with Tom Haskell's words, and the concrete slab marked WCP-19. The locket in her pocket felt like a tether to Kira Langston, pulling her deeper into a mystery the town had buried for 20 years. The library was a squat brick building, unchanged since her childhood, its windows fogged with age. Inside, it smelled of old paper and wood polish, a familiar comfort that steadied her nerves. She needed hard evidence, something to connect. The redacted bus roster and the strange code she'd found. The librarian, a new face in her 30s with glasses and earbuds, barely glanced up as Sarah approached the counter. "Looking for something specific?" she asked, popping out an earbud. "Old town records," Sarah said. "Council minutes, newspapers, anything from 2005. Maybe some history on Willow Creek Reserve." The librarian raised an eyebrow. "That's specific. You working on a project?" "Something like that," Sarah said, keeping her tone neutral. "I'm Sarah Tillman, Ellen's daughter. Used to come here as a kid." The librarian nodded, recognition flickering. "Ellen's girl. Okay, archives are in the back. Microfiche and filing cabinets, but it's a mess. Good luck." She pointed to a dim room behind the stacks. Sarah thanked her and headed to the archives. A cramped space filled with plastic tubs, yellowed newspapers, and metal cabinets labeled by decade. She started with the town council records, pulling out a binder marked 2000 to 2010. Her fingers flipped to October 2005, the week after the bus vanished. The pages for October 15th and 22nd were gone, torn out, leaving jagged edges. Her pulse quickened. She checked the index. Every other week was accounted for, but those two were missing. No coincidence. She snapped a photo of the torn stubs. Her hands steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. She moved to 2004, scanning earlier minutes. A September entry caught her eye. Approval to renew restricted lease for WCP-19 to Department of Environmental Research. No public access until November 1st, 2005. The same code from this lab. Another entry mentioned third-party observers under non-disclosure, temporary access granted. Sarah's breath hitched. If Willow Creek was leased to a research group, the field trip never should have happened. She took another photo, her fingers trembling. Next, she checked the microfiche for the Harrow Gazette. Most issues from fall 2005 were missing, supposedly lost in a basement flood. But she found one from October 12, 2005, 2 days before the trip. On page 4, between an ad for firewood and a church potluck notice, was a small article. Harrow. Middle school resumes Willow Creek field trip after 3-year hiatus. Site closed for cleanup, now deemed safe by council. Sarah read it twice. 3-year hiatus? No one had told parents the reserve was closed before 2005. She printed the page, her mind racing. Someone had greenlit the trip knowing the site wasn't. Just a park dot as she left the archives. An elderly man with a gray dog stopped her at the door. His eyes were sharp, his voice low. "You're Ellen Tillman's girl, Sarah, right?" Sarah froze, nodding. "Yeah. Who are you?" "Doesn't matter," he said, his tone flat. "You're digging up old ghosts." "Stop it. Nothing changes. By stirring this up, you'll just wake the wrong people." He turned and shuffled off. The dog trailing behind. Sarah stood there, heart hammering, then hurried to her car. The man's warning echoed Tom Haskell's. Someone didn't want her asking questions. Back at her mother's house, she parked and noticed the front gate ajar. She hadn't left it open. Her keys tight in her fist, she approached the porch. The screen door swayed in the breeze, the living room light on. Inside, her mother was slumped in the armchair, a cut above her eyebrow, blood trickling down her cheek. "Mom!" Sarah dropped her bag and ran to her. Ellen stirred, blinking slowly. "Sarah." Someone was here. What happened? Sarah's voice shook as she grabbed a cloth to press against the cut. "Don't know," Ellen mumbled. Heard a knock, thought it was a neighbor. Then, nothing. Just woke up like this. "Did you see them?" Sarah asked, her stomach churning. Ellen shook her head. "No, maybe a woman, small, fast, took something." Sarah bolted to the kitchen table where she'd left her satchel. It was open, papers scattered. The locket was gone. So was her notebook, with her investigation log. Her USB drive with scanned files gone. Her heart sank. This wasn't random. She searched the floor and found a white envelope by the door. No stamp, just her name. Sarah. Inside was a single sheet. "Stop digging. You're not just stirring the past. You're walking into it. There's still time to leave, but not much." On the back, a child's drawing in black crayon, a bus, a forest, and a faceless figure watching from the trees. Sarah's hands went cold. She helped her mom to the couch, cleaned the cut, and called a neighbor to check on her. Then she sat at the kitchen table, rewriting what she could remember in a new notebook. Investigation log, October 2025. Home invaded. Locket, notebook, USB stolen. Mom injured. Minor. Threat left withdrawing. WCP-19 leased to research group before trip. October 2005 council minutes missing. Willow Creek closed 3 years prior, not disclosed. Someone's covering tracks. She circled a name she'd seen in the council records. Ellen Carver, Mornington Educational Trust, a school board member in 2005. Her address was redacted, but Sarah remembered an old town directory at the library. Carver was tied to Willow Creek, and Sarah was going to find her. She drove back to the library, the afternoon light fading. The same librarian, Jeanette, was at the desk, sipping coffee. "Back. Already?" she asked, pulling out her earbuds. "Need one more thing," Sarah said. "A town directory, 2004 or 2005. Looking for Ellen Carver." Jeanette's eyes narrowed. "Carver? She's still on the school board, but doesn't show up much. Lives out on Pinneview Road, private estate." She dug out a 2004 directory and slid it over. Sarah found it. Carver, L&M, 32 Pinneview Road, retired psychologist, former school administrator. Sarah jotted it down, her pulse quickening. A psychologist tied to a secret research site? Carver wasn't just a board member. She knew something. Sarah thanked Jeanette and left. The directory page folded in her pocket. The drawing, the break-in, the missing records, it all pointed to someone desperate to keep Willow Creek buried. Sarah wasn't stopping. She'd find Carver, and she'd find out what happened to Kira and the others, no matter who was watching. Sarah Tillman sat in her car outside her mother's house, the child's drawing from the break-in staring back at her. A bus, a forest, a faceless figure. Her stolen locket and notebook were gone, but the missing 2005 council minutes and a WCP-19 code burned in her mind. Someone had erased the truth about the Willow Creek field trip, and Ellen Carver, a school board member, was tied to it. Sarah needed more than redacted rosters and cryptic warnings. She needed hard proof. She opened her phone and dialed the Vermont Department of Transportation, her hands still shaky from the night before. The line rang twice before a man answered. "This is Drew Langley, Vermont. You called about old bus records?" His voice was clipped, tired. "Yeah, Sarah Tillman," she said. "I'm looking into a school bus from Harrow Middle School. Bus 9, October 14th, 2005. It went missing on a field trip. Any GPS data from that day?" Langley paused, papers rustling. "That's a long time ago. GPS wasn't standard on all buses back then. Let me check." A keyboard clicked. "Okay, Bus 9 had a transponder, basic model, pinged every 5 minutes. Data shows it was active until 8:10 a.m., just past the Willow Creek trailhead. Then it stopped." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Stopped how? Like the power was cut or the unit was pulled?" "Last ping was near Route 4B and Quarry Lane." He hesitated. "There's something else." A second ping came at 2:47 a.m. the next day, 12 miles north, near an old quarry off Mill Road. Same bus ID, but it shouldn't have been there. Sarah gripped her phone. "Can you send me those coordinates?" "Sure, I'll email them. But that second ping? We logged it as a glitch. Units don't just move like that." He sounded uneasy. The email arrived minutes later with a grainy satellite image of the quarry overgrown, with a rusted shed and a faint access road. Sarah searched the address. No street view, just a 1980s zoning note about a defunct quarry used for storage. If the bus's GPS reactivated there, it wasn't. A crash hit was moved. She updated her new notebook. GPS ping at 8:10 a.m. Willow Creek. Second ping, 2:47 a.m. Quarry, 12 miles away. Not a glitch. Someone moved it. Sarah drove to the quarry, the road winding through dense forest. By noon, she reached a sagging chain-link gate, half collapsed under vines. The shed stood alone, its paint peeling, no windows. She parked and approached on foot, the air thick with rust and damp soil. Inside, the shed was empty except for faint tire tracks on the concrete floor, leading to a rusted trapdoor bolted. Shut. A snapped chain dangled from the latch. Sarah's heart raced. She snapped photos, her flashlight beam shaking. Footsteps crunched outside. She froze, pressing against the wall. "You shouldn't be here," a gruff voice called. Male. Older, steady. Sarah peeked out. A man in a dark coat stood by the gate, face shadowed. "I'm just looking around," she said, voice calm but firm. "This is private property," he said. "Leave. Now." She nodded, slipping out and hurrying to her car, her photos saved. The man didn't follow, but she felt his eyes on her. As she drove off, her log, "Quarry shed has tire tracks, trapdoor. Unknown man warned me off." Someone's watching. Sarah's next stop was Pinetop gas station, 2 miles from the first GPS ping. Its faded sign and 2 pumps looked stuck in the 90s. A dusty security camera hung above the door. Inside, a man in his 70s with white stubble eyed her warily. "Pumps are credit only," he muttered, scratching a lottery ticket. "Not." "Here for gas," Sarah said, sliding a yearbook photo of Kira across the counter. October 14th, 2005. A bus stopped here early morning. "Did you see it?" He glanced at the photo, his jaw tightening. "Don't remember kids." Sarah leaned in. "It was bus 9, Harrow Middle School. It would have shown on your camera." He sighed, setting the ticket down. "I didn't say there wasn't a tape." He ducked behind the counter and pulled out a dusty box labeled 2005 cam backup. Was told to erase it after that week. Power outage trashed most tapes, but this one jammed in the system. Never got recycled. He slid a VHS across. "It's yours. Good luck finding a player." Sarah's hands trembled as she took it. "What's on it?" Bus pulls in. 8:10 a.m. driver gets out, checks the hood, parks for 5 minutes, then leaves the wrong way, not toward Willow Creek, toward the back road. He met her eyes. Wore a plain jacket, not school colors. Black windbreaker. "Did you tell anyone?" Sarah asked. "Didn't." Next day, a guy from the school board came, real calm, told me to ditch the tapes. I didn't like his vibe. He shrugged. "That's me turning it in." Sarah clutched the VHS, her heart pounding. "Thank you." Back in her car, she wrote, "Pinetop tape shows bus 9 at 8:10 a.m. Driver in black jacket took back road. School board tried to erase it. Tape preserved. The bus hadn't crashed, it was diverted, and someone made sure no one followed." Sarah knew where to go next. Someone who could play that tape. Someone who'd questioned the school's silence in 2005. Sarah Tillman gripped the VHS tape from Pinetop gas station, its dusty label reading 2005 cam backup. The tape showed bus 9, driven by someone in a black windbreaker, veering off toward a back road not Willow Creek Reserve on October 14th, 2005. Her mother's house break-in, the stolen locket, and the threatening note with a child's drawing still haunted her. Someone was watching, desperate to keep the truth about the missing 15 students buried. Sarah needed to see the tape, and she knew one person who might have a working VHS player, Margaret Dunn, a retired Harrow Middle School teacher who'd publicly questioned the school board's silence after the 2005 disappearance. Sarah hadn't seen her in years, but Margaret's defiance made her the best bet. Sarah drove to Margaret's cottage on the edge of Harrow, a small house with sagging eaves and a garden overgrown with weeds. She knocked, clutching the tape. Margaret answered, a wiry woman in her 60s. wearing a cardigan and holding a steaming mug of tea. "Sarah Tillman," she said, her voice flat but sharp. "Took you long enough to show up." "I found something," Sarah said, holding up the VHS. "I need your help." Margaret raised an eyebrow and waved her inside. The living room was a time capsule. Shelves of old books, cross-stitched pillows, and a cabinet packed with outdated media players. "You still use VHS?" Sarah asked, settling on a worn couch. "The classics don't stream," Margaret said, slotting the tape into an ancient player. The TV flickered to life, its hum filling the room. The grainy footage showed a yellow school bus 9 pulling into Pinetop's lot at 8:10 a.m. A tall, wiry man stepped out, not in school colors, but a plain black windbreaker. He checked the hood, glanced around, and walked to the side of the bus, his face briefly catching the camera. Margaret inhaled sharply. "That's Paul Vance." Sarah turned. "You're sure?" "Positive," Margaret said. "He was a temp science teacher, hired last minute in '05. Quiet, kept to himself. He wasn't certified to drive a bus. No way he should have been." Behind the wheel, on the tape, Vance climbed back in. The bus reversed, not toward Willow Creek, but down a side road quarry lane. Sarah paused the tape, her heart pounding. He wasn't just lost. He meant to go that way. Margaret nodded, sipping her tea. The school board shut down questions fast after the bus vanished. I pushed back, got sidelined. Something was off. Sarah updated her notebook. VHS shows Paul Vance driving bus 9, no driver certification. Wore plain jacket, took Quarry Lane. Not Willow Creek. School board hid it. "What now?" Margaret asked, her eyes steady. "I'm following that road," Sarah said. "I need to know where it leads." Sarah drove to Quarry Lane, the maintenance road from the tape. It was barely a path, overgrown with pines and gravel crunching under her tires. The air felt colder, the forest swallowing the daylight. An hour in, past a rusted no-entry sign, she found a concrete structure, half buried in moss, its walls jutting up like broken bones. A faded red code on the frame read WCP-19. Her stomach twisted. This was no preserved dot. She descended a narrow stairwell. Flashlight in hand, the air thick and cold. The underground hallway had peeling paint and exposed pipes. Signs read observation room and containment. Sarah's pulse raced. She pushed open an unmarked door. Inside, a child-sized chair was bolted to the floor, a broken strap dangling. A cracked chalkboard bore 3 faint words. She said, "Wait." In the corner, a small metal star charm lay on the floor, like the one on Kira's stolen locket. Sarah checked her bag, no locket, but this was a second charm. Her mind reeled. Had Kira been here? She stepped closer to the wall. Names were scratched into the paint. K. Langston and Carter E. Ruiz. Dozens, some faded, but Kira stood out. A metallic clank echoed like chains on concrete. Sarah's flashlight flickered. She backed away, heart hammering, and ran up the stairs, the sound chasing her. Outside, she gasped for air, clutching the charm. Her notebook, WCP-19 Underground. Restraint chair, names carved, Kira's charm found, chains heard. The bus hadn't crashed, it was taken here, to a place that wasn't supposed to exist. Sarah drove back to town, the charm in her pocket, her mind racing. She needed someone who'd seen the cover-up firsthand, someone from 2005 who knew why Vance was driving. The names on the wall meant Kira had been here, but had she ever left? Sarah was going deeper, no matter the cost. Sarah Tillman's hands shook as she drove away from the underground facility at Quarry Lane, the star charm identical to Kira Langston's, burning a hole in her pocket. The carved names, the restraint chair, the chalkboards haunting. She said wait all pointed to something far worse than a lost bus. Bus 9, seen on the Pinetop gas station VHS, had been driven by Paul Vance, an uncertified teacher who took a back road in 2005. The school board had tried to erase the tape, just like they'd redacted the student list and buried the truth about Willow Creek. Sarah's mother's house had been broken into, her locket and notebook stolen, a warning left with a child's drawing. Someone was watching, and they didn't want her digging. But Sarah wasn't stopping. She needed someone who'd seen the cover-up up close, someone from 2005 who knew why. Vance was driving. She remembered a name from her mother's old school files. Ray Dillon, a substitute bus driver in 2005. A sticky note in his record read, reassigned after B9 incident. Paid out. Substitutes didn't get payouts. Sarah tracked him down through a friend of her mom's, a retired mechanic named Pete, who played poker with Ray every Thursday. One call later, Sarah was driving an hour north to a trailer park near Rutland, the charm and VHS tape locked in her. Glove box. Ray's trailer sat at the edge of the lot, its porch sagging, a wind chime of old spoons clinking in the breeze. He answered the door, shirtless, eyes bleary but sharp, a beer in hand. "You're Ellen Tillman's kid?" he asked, squinting. Double quotes Sarah. She said, "Can we talk?" He nodded, waving her inside. The trailer was cramped but tidy, with old furniture, a TV with foil on the antenna, and a tub of crossword books. Ray cracked his beer and offered her one. She shook her head. "I'm here about Bus 9, October 2005, she said, pulling out a still from the VHS tape showing Vance. "You knew him?" Ray studied the image, his jaw tightening. "Yeah, Paul Vance, weird guy, showed up out of nowhere, not union. They put him on the roster last minute, always felt off." "Was he supposed to drive that day?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. "Nope." Ray took a sip. Bus 9 was assigned to Dale Carter, a vet driver, 10 years on the job. Morning of the trip, Dale got a voicemail from a blocked number saying he was replaced. No explanation. He raised hell, went to the union, but they paid him off, said it was a mix-up. Reassigned him to desk work. Then he was gone. Sarah's pulse quickened. "Gone how?" "Never saw him again," Ray said. "Not at the depot, not in town." "Like he was." "Never here." He glanced at a cabinet. "Hold on." He returned with a plastic-wrapped clipboard, a driver roster from October 14th, 2005. It listed Bus 9, reassigned to Vance, initialed with C directive. "No AM check-in required." Sarah frowned. "No check-in? Isn't that mandatory?" "Exactly." Ray said, "We all had to log mileage, do safety checks." Vance skipped it. "Means he wasn't in the system. Someone planted him." Sarah snapped a photo of the roster. "Why keep this?" Ray's eyes darkened. Didn't trust what was happening. The school board sealed driver records after the bus vanished. Said it was for privacy. Smelled like a cover-up. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "Do you think those kids are still out there?" Ray looked at her, his face heavy. "I think the truth is. But whoever set this up, they're still around. Be careful." Sarah drove back to Harrow, the roster photo and Ray's words looping in her head. Her notebook. Vance replaced Dale Carter via anonymous call. No check-in. School board hid it. Ray Dillon kept roster. Confirmed setup. She pulled into her mother's driveway at dusk, the house dark except for a flickering porch light. The front gate was open again. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed the charm and tape, tucking them into her jacket, and approached cautiously, keys in hand. Inside, the living room was quiet, her mother asleep in her armchair. Sarah checked her, still breathing. No new injuries. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. In the kitchen, her satchel was untouched, but a new white envelope sat on the table. Her name scrawled in black ink, Sarah. Her heart pounded. She opened it. A single sheet read, "You're too close. Stop now." On the back, another child's drawing a bus, a forest, a faceless figure, identical to the last. Sarah's hands went cold. They'd been here again, but hadn't taken anything this time. A warning, not a theft. She checked the locks, her mind racing. The roster, the tape, the charm, all pointed to a deliberate act. Vance wasn't a teacher. He was a handler. And the school board, led by someone like Ellen Carver, had covered it up. Sarah flipped through her mother's old files, finding a 2005 staff list. There it was. Ellen Carver, Mornington Educational Trust, psychologist, board member. Her address was in a 2004 directory, 32 Pinneview Road. A psychologist tied to WCP-19. Wasn't just overseeing budgets. She knew what happened underground. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, rewriting her log. Second break-in, no theft. New threat withdrawing. Vance confirmed as plant. Carver, psychologist, linked to WCP-19. Address, 32 Pinneview Road. The drawings, the erased records, the facility, it was all connected. Sarah wasn't just chasing ghosts. She was walking into their trap. But Kira's name on that wall meant she'd been there, and Sarah had to know why. She'd go to Carver's house next, no matter who was watching. Sarah Tillman's heart raced as she sat in her mother's kitchen. The second threatening note, "You're too close. Stop now." And its child's drawing of a bus and a faceless figure staring back at her. The break-in, the stolen locket, Ray. Dylan's confirmation that Paul Vance was a plant driver, and the underground facility at Quarry Lane, with Kira, Langston's name carved on the wall, all pointed to a cover-up far deeper than a lost bus. The 2005 Willow Creek field trip was no accident, and Ellen Carver, a psychologist and school board member tied to WCP-19, held answers. Sarah had Carver's address from the 2004 directory, 32 Pinneview Road. She wasn't waiting for another. Warning. She packed her phone, flashlight, and the star charm from the underground room and drove out at dusk, the sky bruising purple over Harrow. Pinneview Road was a quiet stretch, lined with pines and hidden estates. Carver's property was tucked behind a rusted iron gate, ivy choking the fence. The house loomed, tall and narrow, its siding cracked like old skin. No cars, no lights, just the creak of branches and a faint metallic clank from the gate. Sarah, parked a quarter-mile away, killed her lights and started recording on her phone. October 25th, 2025, 8:47 p.m., approaching Ellen Carver's residence. Linked to Mornington Educational Trust and WCP-19. Risk unknown. She slipped through a gap in the fence, her boots silent on the gravel. The side entrance, a sunroom with broken windows, was propped open with a stone. Inside, the air smelled of chemicals and dust. Sarah's flashlight swept over stacks of papers, half-burned photos, and old cassette tapes. The house wasn't a home. It was an archive. Corkboards lined the walls, pinned with sketches of buses, children's names, and dates. One word repeated in red ink, underneath. Sarah's pulse hammered. She moved to a desk where a reel-to-reel recorder sat, labeled WCPKL47. She pressed play. A girl's voice crackled through, small and scared. "I don't want to go back." In the room, "I told you everything." Sarah froze. It was Kira. A calm female voice followed. "What did you hear, Kira?" A pause. "It's in the floor. It hums. It talks when we sleep. It said we can't leave. It's hungry. The others, some are gone. Under, in the dark room. You opened it. What did you see? The woman pressed. The bus never moved, Kira whispered. You made it feel like it did. The tape clicked off. Sarah's breath caught. This wasn't a field trip, it was an experiment. She found a cabinet, open and stuffed with files. One was marked WCP-19KL. Kira Langston, age 12, subject 7. High auditory sensitivity. Reports bus beneath the bus. Dissociation altered. Sleep cycles. Told peers, we're in a loop. We never left. At the bottom, a signature. Ellen M. Carver, Ph.D., lead observer, WCP. Sarah felt sick. Vance wasn't just a driver, he was a handler. Carver wasn't just a board member, she ran the tests. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Sarah froze, her heart in her throat. She snuffed her flashlight and ducked behind the desk. Slow, heavy footsteps. Descended the stairs. A tall silhouette paused in the hallway. Too big to be Carver. Sarah's hand grazed the desk drawer, finding a small, rusted handgun loaded. She gripped it, breath shallow. A figure lingered, then turned, footsteps fading toward the back door. Sarah waited, counting seconds, then grabbed the tape, Kira's, file, and a handful of bus sketches, stuffing them into her bag. She bolted through the sunroom, sprinting to her car, locking the doors with shaking hands. She dumped the stolen evidence on the passenger seat. Her log updated. Carver's house. Holds WCP archive. Kira's tape confirms experiment. File shows psychological testing. Intruder escaped. Carver led it. She drove to her mother's house, checking her mirrors for followers. At dawn, her phone pinged with a news alert. Fire destroys Pinneview Road estate. The article said the house belonged to Ellen Carver, a reclusive ex-psychologist. No body was found, but the fire, starting at 4 a.m., was suspicious, possibly arson. Sarah's stomach dropped. Someone knew she'd been there. The archive was gone. She emailed her evidence tape, files, photos to Elias Reed, a Boston journalist who'd exposed a Vermont police scandal. Her message: Willow Creek was an experiment. Kids were tested, not lost. Carver ran it. Elias replied, within hours. This is huge, Sarah. Like, shut it down huge. I'm getting pushback already. Someone flagged Willow Creek as off limits. I'm driving to Harrow tonight. Keep your phone on. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Someone outside Harrow was listening. Then her phone rang an unknown number. She answered, hesitant. Elias? A young girl's voice, faint and laced with static, spoke. Sarah, don't stop. You're almost there. It's under the road where the bus stopped. We never got off. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Kira? She whispered. You're close, the voice said. Finish it. The line went dead. No call history, no trace. Sarah stared at her phone, her hands trembling. Was it real? A prank? Or had Kira's voice somehow broken through? She pulled up a map of Quarry Lane, where the bus's GPS had pinged. The files mentioned a subchamber. Access limited. The real test site wasn't above ground. It was under the road. Sarah had to go back. Sarah Tillman's hands trembled as she stared at her phone. The girl's voice, Kira's, echoing in her mind. It's under the road. We never got off. The call had no trace, no number, but it pointed her back to Quarry Lane, where Bus 9's GPS had pinged in 2005. Ellen Carver's burned down estate, the stolen locket, the underground facility with Kira's name carved on the wall, and the tape revealing a psychological experiment all screamed cover-up. Sarah had sent her evidence files, photos, the WCP-19 tape to Elias Reed, a journalist, but the fire at Carver's house meant someone was erasing tracks fast. Her new notebook log read, Carver's archive destroyed. Kira's tape confirms experiment. Voice on phone, possibly Kira, points to Quarry Lane's subchamber. Sarah packed her flashlight, phone, camera, and the star charm, leaving a burner phone in her car to upload GPS pings every 5 minutes. She was going underground. Quarry Lane looked the same, overgrown, silent, forgotten. Sarah parked near the mile marker where the bus's GPS had cut out in 2005. The coordinates burned into her memory. Dusk painted the sky gray. She checked. The burner phone signal weak but active. The mile marker was weathered, half collapsed. She crouched, clearing pine needles and dirt, and found a rusted metal hatch, its bolts cracked with age. She pried it open with a crowbar from her trunk, the screech echoing in the quiet. A dark stairwell descended beneath the road, marked WCP Sub. The air was cold, heavy with mold. Sarah's flashlight flickered as she stepped down, her boots echoing. On metal steps, the underground corridor was narrow, lined with peeling paint and dangling wires. Signs read Observation B and Sleep Study 2. Sarah's pulse pounded. She reached a wide chamber, and there it was. Bus 9, intact, covered in dust, its windows blacked out like it had never seen daylight. She approached, her breath shallow. Door creaked open under her touch. Inside, the seats were slashed, damp with mildew. Each had a handwritten name tag in faded marker. K. Langston, N. Carter, E. Ruiz. 15 names, all the missing kids. Sarah's heart hammered. She moved to the back, where a single note lay on Kira's seat. We weren't taken. We were kept. They tested the loop. Some didn't last, I remembered. On the back, a drawing matched the one left at her mother's house bus. A forest, a faceless figure with tight script. Underneath forever, until someone saw Sarah stepped off the bus, her camera flashing as she photographed every seat, every name. Against the chamber's far wall, the same names were carved into the concrete: Kira Langston, Natalie Carter, Eric Ruiz, and 12 others etched over and over, as if someone fought to keep them remembered. Sarah whispered, "I see you," her voice trembling. She snapped more photos, the bus, the carvings, the note. This was proof, not a crash, but a program. A shadow moved outside the chamber. Sarah froze, her flashlight dimming. A man stood by the stairwell, dressed in black, face expressionless. He didn't speak, just raised a phone and typed. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you. That's all we needed." Her blood ran cold. She backed toward the bus, gripping her camera. The man turned and vanished up the stairs. Sarah ran after him, her flashlight flickering, but he was gone when she reached the surface. Her car was untouched, the burner phone still pinging. She checked her photos, every image intact. Her log: found bus 9 in WCP sub-chamber. Names carved. Note confirms experiment. Man in black watched, texted. That's all we needed. They wanted me to find it. Sarah drove to Harrow, her mind reeling. The text meant her discovery wasn't a mistake. They'd let her get this far to tie up loose ends. She tried sending her photos to Elias, but the signal died. No bars, no connection. She pulled into a gas station, hands shaking, and connected to their Wi-Fi. The upload started, but her phone glitched, the screen flickering. She wrote, "Bus 9 underground, intact. Evidence sent to Elias. They're watching. Not a crash test." The carvings, the note, Kira's voice, it all pointed to a truth Harrow had buried for 20 years. Sarah wasn't just uncovering it. She was being led into it. She had to keep moving, to find the final piece before they shut her down. Sarah Tillman's hands shook as she sped away from Quarry Lane. The image of Bus 9 intact, underground, with carved names and a haunting note burned into her mind. The man in black's text, "Thank you. That's all we needed," chilled her. They'd wanted her to find the bus, to lead them to the evidence she'd gathered. The WCP-19 tape, Kira Langston's file, photos of the underground chamber, and the note that read, "We were kept." Tested in a loop. Her burner phone, still pinging GPS, was the only thing keeping her traceable. She'd sent photos to Elias Reed, the Boston journalist, but the upload had failed, her phone glitching at the gas station. Whoever was watching wanted her to think she was close, but they were closing in. Sarah wasn't giving up. Kira's voice, "It's under the road. We never got off," pushed her forward. She had to get the truth out. She drove to Pinetop gas station, its flickering neon sign a beacon in the dusk. The Wi-Fi was spotty, but it was her best shot. Inside, the old man from before was behind the counter, scratching a new lottery ticket. "Back again?" He grunted, barely looking up. "Need your Wi-Fi," Sarah said, opening her phone. She connected, her photos of Bus 9 name tags, carvings, the note uploading slowly to Elias's secure email. The progress bar crawled. She typed, "Bus 9 found underground, Quarry Lane. WCP-19 was a psychological experiment. Kids tested, not lost. Carver ran it. Urgent." The upload hit 80%, then froze. Her phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "You can't send what we already have." The screen went black, then rebooted. The photos were still there, but the upload had failed again. Sarah's heart pounded. They were hacking her phone. She thanked the clerk and drove to Harrow Public Library, the only place with reliable internet and archives to cross-check her findings. The library was nearly empty, the same librarian, Jeanette, at the desk, earbuds in. "You're becoming a regular," Jeanette said, pulling one out. "What now?" "More 2005 records," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "Anything on Mornington Educational Trust or Ellen Carver?" Jeanette's brow furrowed. "Carver? Heard her house burned down last night." "Weird timing." She pointed to the archive room. "Check the microfiche. I'll pull the trust files." Sarah headed to the back, her flashlight and camera tucked in her bag. The microfiche hummed as she loaded a reel for 2005. Most issues were still missing, but she found a November 2004 article buried in the Harrow Gazette. Mornington Educational. Trust secures WCP-19 lease for environmental research. Limited access until 2006. Lead, Ellen Carver, Ph.D. Another page mentioned non-disclosure agreements for all staff, citing sensitive data. Sarah's stomach twisted. The trust wasn't just a school board affiliate, it was running WCP-19. She printed the article, her hands shaking. Jeanette returned with a thin file on Mornington. "This is all we've got." Most of their stuff was sealed or shredded after '05. The file listed Carver as director, with a budget for specialized youth programs at Willow Creek. A single line stood out. WCP-19, temporal and auditory testing. Subject consent waived for educational purposes. Sarah snapped the photo. This was no field trip. It was a lab, and the kids were subjects. She updated her notebook. Mornington Trust ran WCP-19. Carver led temporal experiments, no consent. 2005 records sealed or destroyed. She felt eyes on her, a prickle on her neck. The library was silent, but a shadow moved near the stacks. She grabbed her bag and hurried out, checking her mirrors as she drove to her mother's house. The porch light was off, the gate closed. Inside, her mother was asleep, unharmed. Sarah exhaled, But her relief vanished when she saw another white envelope on the kitchen table, her name scrawled in black ink. She opened it, her heart racing. The note read, "Stop now, or you're next. You found the bus. That's enough." Back held another child's drawing bus, Forrest, faceless figure, identical to the others. A new detail chilled her, a tiny star charm like Kira's drawn in the bus window. Sarah checked her pocket. The real charm was still there. Whoever left this knew what she'd found. Her log, third threat, same drawing with star charm. They know I found bus 9. Upload to Elias failed, but evidence intact. Sarah emailed Elias from her laptop, attaching everything. Photos, the WCP-19 tape transcript, the Mornington file scan. "If I disappear, publish this," she wrote. Elias replied instantly, "Got it. This is bigger than we thought." Others tried exposing WCP-19. None made it. "I'm in Harrow tomorrow. Stay safe." Sarah felt a spark of hope, but the drawings and notes screamed danger. She wasn't just uncovering the truth, she was being hunted for it. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at Kira's yearbook photo, the one she'd kept since episode 1. The star charm, the voice, the carvings. Was as if Kira was reaching out, urging her to finish this. Sarah opened her map app, zooming in on Quarry Lane. The WCP subchamber was the heart of it, but the note's words, "We never got off," suggested something deeper. The experiment wasn't over. Sarah had to go public before they silenced her. But the truth felt heavier than ever. She was close, and they knew it. Elias Reed sat in his Boston office, staring at the encrypted email from Sarah Tillman, sent 3 weeks ago. The subject line was stark. "Willow Creek Truth. Publish if I'm gone." The files attached photos of Bus 9, Kira Langston's WCP-19, tape, the Mornington Educational Trust records, and a note from the bus had shaken him. Sarah's last message warned of a cover-up, a psychological experiment that trapped 15 kids in 2005. Her final log entry read, "They were never gone. They were kept. I saw them." Then silence. Elias had driven to Harrow the next day, October 26, 2025, but Sarah and her mother Ellen were gone, no trace. No records, their house empty. The town acted like they'd never existed. Elias opened the files again. Photos showed Bus 9, intact underground, its seats tagged with names: K. Langston, N. Carter, E. Ruiz. Carvings on the chamber walls listed the same 15 students, etched like a desperate memorial. The WCP-19 tape transcript recorded Kira's voice. "It's in the floor. It hums. We never left." The Mornington file confirmed Ellen Carver, a psychologist, ran a temporal experiment at Willow Creek, testing kids without consent. Sarah's photos of redacted rosters, missing council minutes, and a child's drawing a bus, a forest, a faceless figure tied it together. The note from the bus, "We were kept," tested in a loop. "I remembered," was the final nail. Elias's hands shook. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a crime. He tried calling Sarah's number. Disconnected. Her mother's neighbors claimed they'd moved, but no one knew where. The Harrow Library had no record of Sarah's visits, and Jeanette, the librarian, denied knowing her. Pinetop gas station's owner, when questioned, shrugged and said he'd never given out a tape. The Quarry Lane hatch was sealed, new concrete poured, no trace of the bus. Elias's gut churned. The same people who'd erased the 2005 field. Tripp had erased Sarah, but her evidence was ironclad, and Elias wasn't letting it vanish. He spent weeks verifying her files, cross-referencing names and dates. The Harrow Gazette archives were still missing October 2005, but he found a 2004 lease for WCP-19, matching Sarah's scans. He tracked down Ray Dillon, the substitute driver who confirmed Paul Vance was a plant, replaced via an anonymous call. Dillon's roster, initialed C Directive, was in Sarah's photos. Elias contacted a retired DOT official who verified the bus's GPS pings 8:10 a.m. at Willow Creek, 2:47 a.m. at the quarry. The official said the data was flagged as classified in 2006, buried by a state order. Elias's article took shape, The Vanished Route, Harrow's Hidden Experiment. He published it on November 15, 2025, through a national outlet with a circulation too big to silence. A headline screamed, 15 students lost in 2005 were subjects of secret experiment. The article listed every name from the bus: Carol Langston, Natalie Carter, Eric Ruiz, and 12 others alongside Sarah's photos and the taped transcript. It exposed the Mornington Trust, Ellen Carver's role, and the WCP-19 facility as a psychological testing site, possibly tied to government funding. Elias included Sarah's log. They were kept. I saw them. The response was instant. Social media erupted. Families of the missing demanded answers, and Harrow's school board faced a federal inquiry. Protesters gathered at Willow Creek, holding signs with the students' names. Elias visited Harrow one last time, standing at the Quarry Lane mile marker. The hatch was gone, replaced by smooth asphalt, but he felt the weight of the underground chamber. He'd found a USB in his mailbox days after publishing, no sender, labeled Sarah's log. It held her final notes, ending with, "If I'm gone, tell their names. They're not lost anymore." Elias did. The article forced open sealed records, revealing Mornington's funding came from a defunct defense contractor. No one was charged. Carver was missing, Vance untraceable, but the truth was out. The bus was never found again, the chamber sealed beyond reach. But the names lived. Kira Langston's family held a vigil, her yearbook photo on a banner, her star charm drawn in marker. Sarah's work had done that. Elias wrote a follow-up, dedicating it to her, Sarah Tillman, who saw what no one else would. Wherever she was, her evidence had broken the silence. The vanished route wasn't just a road, it was a truth, and it was remembered.